Jupiter's Circle is actually a prequel series. I did not know this at the time, but recently just read Jupiter's Legacy, so I wanted to check out the next one because the library had it. Also, later this year, 2021, Millar will be starting Jupiter's Requiem, which is a direct sequel. Jupiter's Circle is a prequel, though. So this 12-issue comic book series takes place in the 50s. I really actually enjoyed this one because it was mostly a character-driven story. One of the biggest complaints I had with Jupiter's Legacy was that there's a lot of focus on action, not a lot on character development. It was mostly about action set pieces and people getting in each other's faces. But this one slows things down really, really well, to be honest. One of the biggest complaints I had with Jupiter's Legacy was that we didn't get enough character development for the superheroes. So this one basically focuses just on the superheroes in, I believe, the 50s, late 50s. So basically, the superhero, the Doc Samson, when he went to the island with his friends, there was only 6 of them. I thought there was more, but the 6 of them were granted powers, basically. And in 1959, they formed the Union, which is like a group of superheroes, and they show up whenever a big threat shows up. So there's a lot of interesting. It's sort of not. I don't want to say like it makes fun of, but it has this sort of tongue-in-cheek feel. Like, oh hey, giant starfish showed up over Chicago, we have to take care of it, kind of thing. The threats aren't really the main core focus of the prequel. It's about the characters, their interactions, some foreshadowing of what would have happened in Jupiter's Legacy. But I really like the sort of slower sort of pace. It's not focused on the action, it's just focused on characters doing things. And I really like that because it's one of the things that was missing from Jupiter's Legacy. So we're exploring the utopian, all the other characters before they got together. And there's also some new interesting characters like Blue Bolt. He's gay, but he's closeted because it's the 50s and people won't, he's afraid of going out because, back then it was very stigmatized. And there's also the Flare, who's having an affair with a teenager, not a teenager, but she's 19, but he's making dumb decisions, and it affects the team, of course. And once in a while they'll have to deal with a big threat. There's always a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. It has this really nice Astro City kind of vibe because it takes place in the 50s. So they have their bright, super bright colored outfits, and they're like movie stars. And there's a lot more world building because it's a prequel. For example, they introduce a really cool villain by the name of Jack Hobbs, who's kind of like the Lex Luthor of the Utopian. So they sort of explore that, yes, with the creation of superheroes suddenly appearing and sort of changing the world. Other people come out of the woodwork with powers, sometimes not as great, but then other people have to sort of, other people sort of have to step up. So if you are a car thief, you can't be a car thief, because you're afraid a superhero is going to show up. So maybe you hire someone intelligent, like a scientist or something, to create some sort of super gun. So now you walk around with this giant gun, and then all of a sudden you're a super villain because you got this cool gun. Maybe they'll call you like the Gunhead or something. It's something. It's only touched upon. I know there could have been more, but I really liked how at least they sort of went into that a little bit more, because Jupiter's Legacy just completely there's a super villains just appear, super villains are dead. I'm just like, what? Like, it wasn't really, Jupiter's Legacy didn't really focus on any of the history. So this prequel's a nice slower pace, get to explore all that. And, the first 6, let me see. The first 6 issues are, mostly just sort of adventures here and there. They stop threats once in a while. The artwork is okay. It's obviously not Frank Quitely, and he does the covers, which is sad because, I love his work. But the work by the other guy is not bad. I mean, it's very old-fashioned, angular, kind of, something that would have been, done in that time period. So it's not bad. But I also like, the main core storyline. The first 6 episodes focuses mainly on the Flare and Blue Bolt's sort of stuff going on. And then, let's see, there's also a few other, Skyfox takes more of a precedence in the second volume and his sort of disillusion with the team. But I really liked how they also explored other sort of questions. I mean, little scenarios that aren't really explored in other superhero stories. For example, the Utopian has to deal with Jack Hobbs' nemesis, but he also wants to reform him. So there's like this cool scene where they like have a heart-to-heart, which is something that you'd never see Lex Luthor and Superman do. So it's cool to see that happen here. There's also this subplot with the Utopian and his wife, or not wife, his girl. Yeah, I think it's his wife. He's married to a woman, but he's the perfect husband because, you know, he's the goody two shoes. He can do everything. So he wakes up every day and he makes her an amazing super breakfast with his super speed, and then he zips off to work because he runs a CEO. He probably runs charities, and then he always, you know, he takes her to Paris for dinner or to the moon, to everywhere. He's the perfect husband to the point where it sort of makes her feel bad because she can never live up to his sort of what's the word, his ideals, his just not his ideals, but his effort. You know, like it's hard to pale the comparison. So there's like this weird sort of thing going on with that. It's a cool thing that I've never seen in a comic book story before. Like, imagine if Lois Lane was just like, "Stop it, Clark," you know, like, I don't want to be with you anymore because you're too good. You're really weird stuff like that. So there are some cool storylines going on in the second volume, but the second volume is mostly about Skyfox, basically a younger Skyfox going, leaving the team and sort of doing his own thing. I believe I like the first volume more than the second one because the second one had more of a focus with Skyfox and relationships like that. But Jupiter Circle is definitely a nice improvement because it's more character driven than the first one, which I really liked. It had this nice Astro City nostalgic vibe. Definitely recommend it after reading Jupiter's Legacy though, because if you don't read Jupiter's Legacy, you won't get any of the references. And I'll definitely keep my eye out for Jupiter's Requiem. So that's how I feel about that.